recording available that we can send out to everyone as well. With that said, I will introduce Brian Murphy. He is going to be the person that is in charge of this webinar today. Brian is one of our senior consultants. He's based in our Cincinnati, Ohio location. And I think it's safe to say Brian's done possibly hundreds of upgrades.
Yes, indeed.
So with that said, Brian, I will turn it over to you and we can get started.
Thank you very much. Well, hello everybody. For those of you on the East Coast, good afternoon. For those of you in the West Coast, good morning. Thanks for joining us today. So we want to kind of hit on some of the topics around planning for your upgrade to Dynamics GP 2013. So hopefully many of you have started thinking about the potential for upgrading to GP 2013. There's a lot of reasons to do so. Yeah, many of you have probably been speaking to your consultants, your associates consultants, to understand the benefits available to you, and so hopefully we can put a little more information in front of you today and make a little more sense why you might want to move forward. So that being said, here we go. So there we go. So a number of things that you might consider when why should you upgrade. First and foremost, hopefully, we would hope that you would see some new functions that you might be able to leverage. That's absolutely why we want to see you move forward, to take advantage of the features that are available in the product so that you can get the most from your product. So there is a document that Microsoft provides called What's New in Dynamics GP 2013. If you haven't found that on Customer Source, please ask us. We'll be happy to send it to you. Most of the time when we perform an upgrade with our clients, many of our consultants will do a What's New conversation during some of that new users training to go over some of those new functions and see if you can leverage those or how you might leverage those so that you can get the most out of the software. So good topic there. Next item, supportability. So just so hopefully many of you are no longer on GP9. If you are, support ended for GP9 back in 2011. GP 2010 support ended late last year. But you will notice that GP 2013, that support runs, standard support runs through 2015, and then GP 2013 is expected to, standard support is expected to run through April of 2018. So those are some dates to keep in mind. Now, of course, some of those dates are for the full product, and to meet those dates, you have to be at certain service pack levels, that kind of information. But as we proceed along, that information will be provided. If you need that, that's always available on Microsoft's website. You can pull that document at any time, or we can supply those to you. So as a matter of fact, with regards to service packs, one of the topics that many people in the IT realm always take is, or the approach that people take is that I'm not going to apply a new software until that first service pack has released. Well, just to let you know, Service Pack 1 for GP 2013 came out, boy, I don't remember the exact date, but it's at least, I'm going to say, been at least 60 days ago. We are expecting Service Pack 2 probably in the third quarter of this year, but we don't know. We don't have a firm, or at least I don't have a firm date on that. So, next topic, why you might want to consider upgrading, is to improve efficiency. And that goes back to using some of those new features. We would hope that you would find some features that you might be able to leverage and allow your accounting teams to leverage that product and do more with less. So there are a number of new features. As many people have to make the transition to the new licensing model, many clients will have available to them new features and functions, and sometimes they just need to be turned on. Other times they need to be turned on and configured. That being said, we wouldn't advocate that you just go and turn these on, not without understanding why you might want to turn them on, what that impact is as you move forward. We see many, many times when we go in to perform an upgrade, we see modules that are initialized and turned on that actually create tables in your databases, and people aren't using them. One of the problems with that can be that as we need to carry those forward, because if at some point in time you decide to actually use it and those tables haven't been brought forward, it can be a little bit painful to then get those upgraded to the right version so that they properly work in your current environment. So just something to consider. So, and then of course, one of the last bullet points here is you've made quite an investment in what we suspect for most of you. Your ERP solution is a very mission-critical application to your corporate structure. It probably makes great sense to maintain that investment, and while you don't always need to be at the absolute very most current release, you probably don't want to stay too terribly far behind in case that there's a problem in the specific function that you need to leverage or whatever. We always want to be able to call Microsoft, and because if we're out of support with Microsoft, Microsoft does have the option, not that this happens very often, but that they do have the option to say, you know what, that's an unsupported version, and we're not going to help you figure that out. Now, Socius is always going to try to help you figure that out, but sometimes the only way to resolve that type of issue, truthfully, long-term, is probably going to be to upgrade. So if you're going to need to upgrade anyway, you probably just need to put yourself on a plan of upgrading on a somewhat regular basis every 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years. Maybe you stay a little bit behind. That's something for you to decide from a IT and a corporate level, but it's probably something to strongly consider how you want to move forward. So on to the next slide. So some of the things that we want to, as we sit with our clients and we help them understand more about the upgrade process, some of the things we want those people to consider are a number of the bullet points that we have here. So first and foremost, when you go to plan for this process, you need to think about the downtime that's going to be required. Often, without even knowing the size of how many companies you have in your Great Plains environment, how large those databases are, that kind of information, I can generally say that a Dynamics Great Plains upgrade is going to take on the order of maybe 1 to 2 days. That being said, is it a big issue for you, for your accounting team, to be out of the system for X number of hours while we perform that process? Yes or no? We don't know that. You have to help us define that. You have to decide, what is acceptable to you. We do perform weekend upgrades, as many of you know, and in the IT realm especially. That becomes a fact of life. We don't particularly, they don't make me jump up and down with joy, as they probably don't for you. And but that is an option, although it is a higher priced option. So it is available. I'll just leave it at that. Things other to consider, there's of course there's always the risk of a failed upgrade. But I say that because that should always be considered. But in the last 6 years of doing upgrades, I have never had an upgrade that has failed. We have had plenty of upgrades that we have to work through issues, but I have truthfully never had an upgrade that is honestly failed. I have never been involved in an upgrade where we've lost data or anything else. So one of the great things about Dynamics GP, it's a very mature product. Socius has been doing these upgrades for a long time. We have a number of people in our offices, in almost all of our offices, that a large part of their job is performing installs and upgrades of Dynamics GP. So we have great experience doing this. We've encountered a number of issues. Occasionally we get surprised, but because we have so many people doing these, usually we're able to work through those issues. And then when we can't, we can always call into Microsoft and get the additional assistance of them. So Lisa mentioned earlier that I probably have done hundreds of upgrades. I generally average 25 upgrades a year, plus the associated test upgrades and that kind of information. So yes, we do hundreds and hundreds of upgrades. So we have encountered many issues through the years and have seen many topics, and so hopefully we can that experience translates to the least amount of downtime and difficulties performing your upgrade. So other things to consider: hardware and SQL Server upgrades. In one of the upcoming slides, you're going to see there are a number of the operating systems no longer supported, additions of SQL no longer supported. So hardware and SQL Server upgrades are definitely bullet points to consider for upgrading to GP 2013. So other things to consider is especially maybe evolving around processes. To talk about replacing some of your inefficient processes. Can you consider doing them in different ways, or there are functions, new functions that can be replaced by some of these modules? Next topic: third-party modules. This, although now that Great Plains 2013 has been out for an extended period of time, this is becoming a much less of an issue. But the first couple of months after GP 2013 released, there were numerous third-party products that did not have their GP 2013 products ready yet to coincide with GP 2013. So one of the first things, if you are using a third-party product or third-party module to plug into Dynamics GP, the first thing we're going to do is we want to go to that third-party product and make sure that they are ready for that upgrade. So that's a big topic. Next item: user security. Most of you or all of you have probably already upgraded from GP 9. If you have, you may well remember that you had to go through a transition of upgrading the user security. Usually Socius took the approach that it was a great time to actually review user security and actually put in your new security model. It was actually possible to upgrade the security, although frankly it made quite a mess of the user security table, especially if you had a large number of users in conjunction with a large number of companies. If you are in the process of upgrading from GP8 or GP9, anything prior to GP10, then as part of the upgrade process, we will want to sit with you and discuss the user security. So, other topics to consider: do you use custom code? If you do, That code may need to be, well, it most definitely needs to be reviewed, but it also may need to be reworked, rewritten. It will depend upon possibly if that custom code is using functions that are no longer available to us. So those are things to consider. Other items to consider: integrations. If you're using Integration Manager or any other integrating product, you may need to review those integrations to make sure that those integrations still work after the upgrade. Those integrations may need to be tweaked a little bit because of new fields, changes, that kind of information. And then other things to consider, planning considerations, would be reporting. This can be a big topic for some people. If you're still using FRX, for instance, FRX is no longer officially supported by Microsoft in conjunction with Dynamics GP 2013. It has been replaced with Management Reporter. So if you haven't already made that transition, we'll want to have that discussion with you to go over that transition plan and how you want to consider moving forward. So, next item. Of course, this is a topic for everyone. Budget considerations. It'd be great if none of us had to worry about these kind of things, but they do. So things that you will need to keep in mind. Of course, since you're current on your Microsoft licensing, paying your yearly dues, then you're entitled to the latest version of Dynamics GP, being GP 2013. That entitles you to software and support and that kind of information, but what it doesn't give for you is if you want to leverage us to help you assist you with the upgrade process. Of course, I don't know, it's crazy, but we'd like to get paid also. So that being said, of course, part of your budget consideration is the time that it's going to take out to work with you and do those kind of things. Things that you need to plan for is, are you going to do a test upgrade? We strongly recommend it. Microsoft strongly recommends it. And if you have any customizations or anything out of the ordinary, frankly, I think it'd be crazy not to perform a test upgrade. But then you also have your production upgrade, things like training, support, those kind of things. Other items to consider: if you need to replace any hardware. Some people will. Some people will take this opportunity maybe to replace the physical or virtual server where their SQL Server is hosted. You may want or need to upgrade to a newer version of SQL. Those are some things to consider. Also, you may, because you have customizations, maybe some of those customizations will need to be reworked, either by yourself, by Socius, or by some other third-party vendor. And those are all kinds of considerations that need to be thought through and given proper time and resources to accomplish those items. And a lot of times, as you discover that you have new features, new products available to you, and as we point out to you how you might be able to leverage some of these items more efficiently, that might lead into some projects after the upgrade. Once the upgrade is completed, okay, now the next step, let's put in this new feature so that we can take advantage of some of these new features. So those are some items to consider for your budget. Hardware planning. So I covered this a little bit brief just a moment ago. You might want to consider, is this a good time to upgrade my server? As we will see in a few moments, there are some existing, your present SQL Server may be on an operating system that is no longer supported. Your SQL Server SQL Server Edition may no longer be supported. So those are some things to keep in mind. So, and a big topic: do my workstations meet Microsoft supported configuration? Believe it or not, Windows XP and Windows Vista are no longer supported with Dynamics GP 2013. Matter of fact, if you try to perform the installation, often the install won't even run. That being said, we would strongly recommend you go replace those in some manner. So just things to consider with regard to hardware also. Do you need to upgrade SQL? And if you are going to upgrade SQL, we would generally strongly recommend, and most people in the IT realm would recommend, that you probably transition from 32-bit a 32-bit operating system to a 64-bit operating system if you haven't already. All right. So what client operating systems are still supported? So Windows XP is not any longer supported for Dynamics GP 2013. Of course it is for 10, or for Dynamics GP 10. It is for Dynamics GP 2010, but it is not supported for GP 2013. Same for Windows Vista. But of course Windows 7 and Windows 8 are fully supported in the Professional and Ultimate editions. All right, which database servers are supported? So this is regards to Microsoft SQL Server. So SQL 2012 is fully supported. Okay, SQL 2008 R2 with Service Pack 1 is supported, or SQL Server 2008 with SP3 or later is fully supported. What is not supported is Microsoft SQL Server 2005. It is no longer supported with GP 2013. So for some people who are still running SQL Server 2005, probably a great opportunity to take this time to go ahead and upgrade to a much more current edition. Just as an FYI, SQL Server 2008 R2 standard support from Microsoft actually expires in January of 2014. So if you're still running SQL Server 2008 R2, it is still under regular Microsoft support through January of next year. Now that being said, because it is on the supported list for Dynamics GP, if you would have a problem with Dynamics GP with regards to SQL, if we go through the Business Solutions channel, they will give us full support. But if you had other databases sitting on your 2008 R2 install and you called regular Microsoft, as of January, you are not going to get support, or they don't have to still offer you support on that product. So that's something to consider. Okay. All right. Server operating systems. This is going to kind of coincide with what we've been seeing all along, but the big thing to notice here is that on this page, Windows Server 2003 isn't on this page. So anything on Windows Server 2008 is supported, I believe. 2008 SP2 or later. Windows 2008 R2 with Service Pack 1 or later is fully supported, and Windows Server 2012 is supported. So all right, so here's kind of a summary list of what is no longer supported with Dynamics GP 2013. I hit on these earlier, but we'll hit them again. So XP is no longer supported, Vista's out, 2003 is out, SQL Server 2005 is out. With regards to software products, especially at the workstation level, Office 2007 is no longer supported in conjunction with Dynamics GP 2013. Now, what does that mean? Because, of course, the product's going to work perfectly fine on your operating system if you're using it, but there are certain functions that there are a number of new features in GP 2013 that leverage features in Office. If they happen to leverage a feature that is only available in one of those higher editions of Office, well then of course it can't work. So that being said, if you want 100% full functionality of the Office features inside of Dynamics GP 2013, you need to be above Office 2007. Okay? You need to be above Internet Explorer 7.0. If you're using Business Portal for your Dynamics environment, the Business Portal works on SharePoint. So SharePoint Services 3.0 is no longer supported. Office SharePoint Server 2007 is no longer supported. You have to be on the higher editions. Okay. And in addition, the last bullet point here is Acrobat 8 and 9 are no longer supported by GP 2013. So, all right, next thing, moving on to steps preparing for your upgrade. So as we work with you to prepare for your upgrade, these are the topics that we're going to want to have you to think through, to potentially have you perform before we get there, to save. Of course, it's all about saving the dollars, having us do as little as possible. If you have the capabilities to do the lifting on these topics, we want you to do so. That's great. So a number of things that you're going to want to do, really preparing for the upgrade. There's really not a lot to do as far as preparing your company data, but what definitely should be performed before every upgrade is check links should be performed on every Great Plains company prior to the upgrade. It's a really great item that needs to be done. It performs a lot of housekeeping behind the scenes, comparing tables and making sure that everything is, all the balancing entries are available in the corresponding tables. And so that's a really, really great thing to perform before your upgrade, most definitely. Many clients don't have comfort level running check links. If they don't, then we have no problem performing that operation for you, but you understand that of course we're going to be charging you for that time that is required. If you have comfort level doing that, that is a great way that you can hold down your costs when you leverage us to perform your upgrade. So other items, if you have unused companies in your GP environment and you do not want to have them for historical purposes, maybe they're old test companies, and you just don't want to upgrade them, fine, let's talk about removing them. If you do remove them though, let's remove them from the front side, from within Great Plains. Don't just go into SQL and just delete the databases. Yes, that will remove it, but it will it'll leave a number of entries inside the Dynamics database. And so while that can be cleaned up and it's not a terribly difficult process, it's just a whole lot easier to do it from inside the application, and then you don't have to do any cleanup. So other things to consider is preparing your test environment. As I said earlier, Microsoft and Socius both believe that it's a best practice to always perform a test upgrade. We're always going to advocate that test upgrade, and if you leverage us to perform your upgrade, if you don't want to perform a test upgrade, you're actually going to have to opt out. We're going to make you sign something that says that you understand that because we didn't do a test upgrade, It's not a problem. We'll get through the process, but if we encounter steps along the way, it's probably going to take us a little bit longer to figure out the problem, and so the cost to you could potentially be greater downtime. So you have to understand that and be willing to accept that responsibility. So other things in your preparation, plan for the appropriate downtime. What are you going to have your people do while the system is down, so on and so forth. In addition, we're probably, if we have some custom code, there's going to have to be some, that code may need to be updated. And of course, after it's updated, it's going to have to be tested. Even if it doesn't have to be updated, we most definitely need it tested before we perform our production upgrade to make sure that it actually works exactly the way we expect it to. So, next item. This has to do, for those of you who have not already transitioned off of FRX and transitioned to Management Reporter. As we have gone through this process over the last several years, Microsoft and associates have discovered that there are a number of items that don't always transition perfectly during the migration process. And so we now know that there are a number of housekeeping steps that we can do on FRX to make that transition go much, much smoother. So what we would generally recommend is that you sit with us and actually review your FRX environment, looking for unused objects, that kind of stuff. We can also point out some items that we know tend to be problematic when you perform that migration, and we can probably help reduce that migration pain as you transition to Management Reporter. So, other things in the pre-upgrade steps, of course, getting registration keys. And those registration keys, of course, that's pretty straightforward, getting the keys for Dynamics GP. But we also, if you had third-party products, we need to get those registration keys. We'll probably need to acquire that third-party software, that kind of thing. Next item, run pre-upgrade reports. We will provide to you a list of the suggested reports that you run prior to an upgrade. And we would strongly recommend that you save those off to maybe a PDF or to a text file so that you can run both pre and post upgrade comparisons and make sure that your data is exactly what you expect it to be. I can tell you for a fact that when I perform upgrades, I absolutely always run a detailed trial balance for an extended time frame for every single company that I perform an upgrade on. So while that is not 100% all-inclusive, because some of you are running payroll and a number of these other modules, generally it very much proves out to me that at least the accounting data is good, but there are a number of steps along the way that I would also know if there's actually an issue going through the upgrade process. But that being said, we would also like you to have great comfort level in your data, so we can always provide to you a list of the suggested reports that you might want to consider running both before and after the upgrade. So again, preparing for the upgrade, are there any companies that need to be removed? We talked on that earlier. Here's a bullet point that has been in the upgrade documentation for many, many years. I haven't encountered this problem in several years, but in the past it has been a problem at times in the past. So Microsoft strongly recommends that you should post, delete, or print all single-use batches. And notice I say single-use batches. They are not recurring batches. So some of you won't be able to delete or post a lot of your single-use batches. They're in the future. That would cause great pain for you to do so. We understand that. That's not a problem. So at the very least, if that's going to be the case, then at least go print those out. If any of those batches would become corrupt during the upgrade process, then at least they could easily be recreated. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen any of these batches get corrupted during the upgrade process, but I can tell you in years past, it absolutely did happen. And more than one time, we have been very, very thankful that we have done the best practices as Microsoft has provided to us, and it has saved both time and money. So, next item, of course, we're going to ask whoever's in charge of your SQL environment to make at least one backup of your of all of your Great Plains databases. In addition to that, more often than not, I know that when I'm performing the upgrades, as long as we have sufficient disk space, I will probably make a number of different backups throughout the process, especially if we have to, at times we've done upgrades where someone's upgrading all the way from GP7 all the way up to GP 2013, and to do so you can't go all the way from here to there. You have to do a number of different steps. So in that kind of case, we're probably making a number of different backups at every major stage in between that process, so that if we encounter a major item and need to revert back, we can absolutely do so. So, next topic, print comparison reports. I talked about that earlier, but especially if you print these to a PDF, there's very little pain in doing so. You're not killing a bunch of trees. It's very easy to compare those reports both before and after. So it is a very simple process to endure, and should ensure in your mind that your data has upgraded the way you expected it to. Okay, so this slide here talks about what does checklinks do for you. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but as I said earlier, basically the number one bullet point here is that it processes, or it analyzes the relationships between the different tables in your physical files. It looks for missing entries. And then if it would find those entries, it will actually log all of this in a report that you can then print after the fact. So that being said, if you're going to run checklinks, we would strongly recommend before you run checklinks that you have a backup, you make a fresh backup of any company that you're going to perform checklinks in. It truly can make data changes. I have seen in the past where it has made data changes that were not desirable, and if we hadn't had a fresh backup, it would have been very painful to go back and remove some of those entries and recreate those processes. So now that kind of issue usually comes about, you're working through a specific kind of error or something like that, and is not usually encountered when you're running checklinks for prior to an upgrade, but the process should still be to always make that fresh backup before you run checklinks, and maybe even run one after you run checklinks. So something to strongly consider. And if you don't feel comfortable performing checklinks on your own, and you want us to either work with you to run those checklinks, we'll be more than happy to do so, and to give you whatever comfort level you need from us. So it is definitely something that is very important, can be very important. Okay, next item. So what do we do when we come on site? Well, as I said earlier, we make backups. We'll ask you to make some backups. More than likely, we're also going to make some backups. And those backups may not just be the databases. If you're using FRX, we're going to back up the critical files for FRX, the sysdata folder, the IO data folder, the very, very important topics. Possibly in FRX, we're probably going to export out your spec sets so that if we had to recreate FRX, we very most definitely could. Similarly, in Integration Manager, we're going to back up your Integration Manager database so that we have it. We're probably going to back up your Dynamics GP code folder so that if we need to revert back, we can do so with minimal effort. Management Reporter, similarly, Management Reporter, the great thing, Management Reporter now is no longer FRX was using an Access database on the back end. Management Reporter is now using a SQL database. So if we're backing up all the applicable databases on our SQL Server, chances are we're going to have our Management Reporter database backed up, but we're definitely going to want to do so. So backups, you probably just can't make too many. So the other thing that we're going to do is that we're going to follow Microsoft's best practices for performing these upgrades. That's what we do. So and we hope that by doing so, we're going to minimize the amount of downtime. So, and how do we accomplish that? Literally by following Microsoft's documentation first and foremost, but also by using great common sense. So some of the things that Microsoft suggests and that are very wise to do as part of the process, we may need to apply a service pack depending on what version of Great Plains you're presently on. So we might actually have to apply a service pack before we can actually perform your upgrade. So that will just depend on where you sit today. So another big topic, of course, will be to actually perform the data upgrade. Other items to do will be install and possibly update third-party products. Many third-party products actually have tables that will have to be updated. Some third-party products actually have their own databases that have to be updated, those kind of topics. Other things we might need to do as we go through the process, install your custom code. Hopefully the custom code has been reviewed to make sure that it's fully compatible with GP 2013 and someone has signed off on that. You've done your user acceptance testing. Those are the kind of things we want to go about. Here's a major topic. Update. Almost every environment has some modified forms and or reports. And so as part of the process, those most definitely will have to be updated to compatibility for GP 2013. The process is rather straightforward, but we have to make sure that we do it. So, and then topic to consider, if you're on FRX, migrating to Management Reporter. If you're already on Management Reporter, very likely you're on an older edition of Management Reporter. We would probably upgrade you to the latest edition of Management Reporter. Just so that you know, the most current edition at this time for Management Reporter is Management Reporter 2012 with Update Rollup 5. So if you're on anything prior to that, we would probably go ahead and take the advantage, the time advantage to go ahead and bring that forward. So, and then many of you, because you may have to replace your SQL Server, or you may be replacing a physical or a virtual server, you may be moving to a new server. So as part of that process, if your Great Plains shared files were on that old server, we may have to remap some of those shares. If we go to a new SQL Server, one of the things we want to see set up, whether we do it or work with your IT folks to do it, we most definitely want to see database maintenance plans set up, backup plans set up, and SQL database mail set up so that someone gets notified when the SQL Server has some sort of issue. So, all right, so big steps, and this is where we really leverage you and your team, and that'll be in the user user acceptance. And so we're going to generally ask you to do your user acceptance testing because only you know your data as well as anybody. So some of the things that we're going to ask you to do are, of course, are to print those post-upgrade reports and compare them to the ones we made before we began. We want you to test the functions of GP, especially your critical, anything that's critical to your business. You know, if you're using payroll, hey, you know, have you tested all the payroll functions? Do they work as you expect? Do you have custom code? If you do, let's go review. Let's go test all that custom code. Does it work exactly the way you want it to? And because if it doesn't, we need to figure that out before we perform that test upgrade. If we haven't done a test upgrade, we need to figure that out and get it fixed as quickly as possible as you go live. So, and then other things, test the custom reports, test your integrations, no matter what your integrating product is. If you're using Integration Manager or you're using some other third-party integrating tool, we want to test all those integrations. We want to make sure that they work. We want to make sure they work as planned, and you don't have any issues. All right. So rolling out to users, well, of course, you know, and many people's IT environments are much different today than they were even just 5 years ago. Many of our clients are using Great Plains sitting on a terminal server instead of a locally installed client. But no matter where that client is, we're most definitely going to have to update that client you know, so that it corresponds with the database level. So if we have a full client installed on your workstations, we need to plan for the time that it's going to take to update those workstations. If we just have a couple of terminal servers or Citrix servers to update, we similarly need to plan time, but it's probably going to be far less. So one of the topics that we usually like to do maybe right before you go live is to do what's new training with your users. Maybe point out some of those new features that you all have already discovered you want to leverage, and maybe show them some new ways they can do some things. Hopefully, by doing so, that will save time in their jobs and ultimately save you money. So, and then of course, as we get ready, the final topic is go live. So as you go live, do you want us to be available to help you with any minor issues, or do you feel comfortable taking care of those items on your own? So, and of course, if during the discovery process, if you've talked about that, once you upgrade GP, you want to talk about some additional projects. Well, then at this time, that'd probably be the time to consider, okay, what are those next steps? How can we leverage these new features? How can we get the greater efficiency out of these new features? That kind of information. So those are some things for you to consider. And of course, last bullet point down here at the bottom, upgrading FRX to Management Reporter. I've hit on that a number of times. And then also, the add new modules. So I did say earlier that a number of you, because of the license model change, many of you will now have some additional modules available to you. So if there's a possibility you want to leverage those, that may be the time to talk about that, discuss the effort that might be involved to set those up and start leveraging those. All right?
Brian?
Yes, ma'am.
We do have a couple questions.
Okay, go ahead.
One of them is, what experience has Socius had with installing GP 2013 in a cloud environment?
Well, I mean, the easiest way I can say that is, so first of all, Socius actually has a data center where we do host Dynamics GP for a number of clients. So that is in our own private cloud, and that is perfectly fine. That is a supported model. Now, when you say a cloud environment, some people think, okay, I want to access my GP environment through a terminal server, or one thing that's available to you now with Dynamics GP 2013, a brand new feature, is that there's actually now a web-based client to access Dynamics GP 2013. So that could be something for you to consider. That is probably a discussion that you should have with your primary consultant to discuss whether that is the right fit for you. But I mean, from the aspect of a cloud environment, GP is 100% compatible in that realm and is not a problem at all. So.
Okay.
And
then the second question that we have is, does the upgrade from 2010 to 2013 require additional servers, for instance, a web server, or can everything run on one server?
Wow, that's a really big question, and so that would totally depend. It would depend on what you were using, how many users you were using, what else is on that server. So if you're just using the base product, so when you say, I mean, if you on that server you would have SQL, and then you would have clients speaking, the client workstation speaking directly to SQL, probably you don't need anything else. But if I find out that you have you're using Business Portal, and Business Portal requires IIS, Business Portal requires SharePoint, then very likely it would be considered a best practice for that to be on a separate server. But if you're a very small environment, you might decide that, hey, I'm going to make a trade-off. I understand that it probably should be on its own separate server, but because I have a very small user count, we might still put it all on one server. So I can't make really general statements without knowing much more about your environment, your user counts, how you're leveraging the product. So hopefully that gives you the basics of the answer. Anything else, Lisa?
No, that was it for now.
That's it? Okay. All right. So we're just about done here. I only have a couple slides left, thank goodness. So I have on the screen right here so a couple of what we called important links. You can find this information on Customer Source. You can request it of Lisa or your account manager or your primary consultant. Any of them can provide this information to you. But one of the first things that you should look at when you're considering the upgrade is actually going through the system requirements document, making sure that your server, your workstations, your accompanying software, make sure that everything meets the requirements. The next topic here is if you're going to perform the actual upgrade yourself, something that you really should take a look at is the hot topic page. It's something that we monitor on a regular basis. As Microsoft encounters major bullet points during the upgrade process, they will post them up to this area. At times in the past, they've had to post scripts that have to be run, and if you don't, you run the risk of this happening or something like that. So those are a couple of terrific resources to review before you ever consider a GP 2013 upgrade. So, and I'm at our last slide. So at this time, I'm open to any questions that anyone has for me. Lisa, I don't know if you want to open up the phones, or does anyone have any questions for us?
Okay, I don't see any more questions being typed in. Just because we have so many people on the phone lines, I'm not going to open the lines up. It just tends to cause too much noise on the phone. So if you do have additional questions, if you could type those in under the question section. And while you're doing that, I did have a question come up asking if the slides were going to be available.
Oh, I'd be more than happy to provide those. I checked with our
marketing department. They are going to put those on the Socius website under socius1.com/GP2013. So the slide deck will be available.
Great.
And I don't see any more questions at this time.
Okay.
So with that, again, if you do find that you have questions afterward, feel free to reach out to Brian, to your account manager, myself. We'll be happy to help anyone answer those. And if you do, one thing that I don't know if Brian mentioned or not, when you do request or when you need GP 2013 keys, you cannot download those off of Customer Source as you've been able to download other keys in the past. GP 2013, you do have to request through your partner, so you do have to make that request through us to get those keys. So just kind of an FYI on that. So one more look for questions. I don't see anything. With that, Brian, thank you so much. It was very informative. And thank everyone on the phone lines for your time. We do appreciate you taking time away from your day to joining us for this. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye now.